Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. We'll start with MPC-001 Cognitive Psychology, Learning and Memory. In this, 4 blocks are there and each blocks have 4 units. Let's start with block 1, unit 1, Cognitive Psychology. So, what is the cognitive psychology? Cognitive psychology is the study of how our mind works. It focuses on the mental process such as perception, memory and reasoning. What is meant by the perception? It means understanding the information through our senses. Memory means storing and remembering information. And the last one, reasoning. Reasoning means thinking and solving problems. In simple words, cognitive psychology study how we think, learn, remember and understand the things. Why do psychologists study the mind? Psychologists believe that our behavior is influenced by the way our mind works. To understand why people behave in a certain way, they study the mental process. For example, if you are watching this video right now, cognitive psychology can explain first one, how your brain recognizes the words you hear. Second, how you understand the meaning of the information. And the last one, why you are interested in learning this topic. You may be studying because you want to complete your course, you want to get a good marks, you want to build a successful career. These goals and your plan influence your behavior and motivate you to learn. This shows that our actions are connected to our thought and intentions. What is cognitive psychology? Cognitive psychology study how the people think, learn, remember, understand and solve the problems. In simple words, it studies the mental activities we use every day. Now, we will see everyday examples. Have you ever checked your work carefully but still missed an obvious mistake? This happens because our brain does not always notice everything clearly. Cognitive psychology study why this happens. Have you ever found it difficult to listen to a lecture and take a note at the same time? This is related to attention. Our attention is limited, so doing two mental action together can be challenging. Have you ever repeated a phone number again and again until you dial it? That is an example of short-term memory at work. Have you ever struggled with a difficult problem, taken a break and then suddenly found the answer? This is called the incubation effect. Sometimes our mind continues working on a problem even when we are not actively thinking about it. This example shows that mental processes do not always work perfectly. When they fail, psychologists get valuable clues about how the mind works. That is why cognitive psychology is often called the scientific study of the mind. Next topic is research method in a cognitive psychology. This I'll explain in a short and easy way. Research in cognitive psychology helps us understand how the people think, how they learn, how they remember information, how they solve the problems. The main goals of research are collecting data, analyzing data, developing theories, testing hypotheses, applying findings in a real life. In simple words, researchers want to know how and why our mind works. Now, we will see the research method. The first method is experiments. These experiments are usually conducted in a laboratory where researchers control different conditions. There are three important variables: independent variable, dependent variable and the control variable. Independent variable, the factor that is changed. Dependent variable, the result being measured. Control variable, factors kept constant. For example, a researcher may study whether listening to music affects memory performance. Now, second method is psychobiological research. This method studies the relationship between the brain and the thinking. Researchers use brain scans and brain imaging technique. This helps them understand which parts of the brain are involved in memory, attention and learning. The third method is self-report, case study and naturalistic observation. Now, what is self-reports? Self-reports, people describe their own thought, feelings and experiences. Case studies. In the case study, researchers study one person or a small group in detail. Naturalistic observation. In this, researchers observe the people in their natural environment without interfering. These methods help researchers understand real life behavior. Fourth method is computer simulations and artificial intelligence. Researchers create computer programs that imitate human thinking. This simulation helps the scientists understand memory, learning, problem solving. AI has become an important tool in a cognitive psychology. Cognitive psychology is a part of cognitive science. It combines the knowledge from psychology, biology, artificial intelligence, philosophy, linguistics, anthropology. Together, this field help us understand how humans acquire and use knowledge. Next topic is domains of cognitive psychology. In this, the first one is cognitive neuroscience. This domain study the relationship between the brain and the mental process. It helps us understand how the brain controls thinking, memory, learning and emotions. For example, researchers study which parts of the brain help us remember the information. Second is the perception. It is the process of receiving and interpreting information through our senses. We see, hear, smell and touch the things, and our brain gives the meaning to this sensation. For example, recognizing a familiar face in a crowd is a result of the perception. Next is pattern recognition. This helps us identify objects, faces, letters and sounds. Our brain organizes sensory information into meaningful pattern. For example, when reading a book, we recognize letters and words almost instantly. Next is attentions. It is the ability to focus on important information while ignoring distractions. Since our mental capacity is limited, we cannot focus on everything at the same time. For example, listening carefully to a teacher while ignoring the background noise. Next, consciousness. It means being aware of ourselves and our surroundings. It includes our feeling, awareness, thought and awareness of what is happening around us. For example, noticing that is getting late while studying. Next, memory. It helps us store and retrieve information. There are two main types, short-term memory and the long-term memory. For example, remembering your phone number or recalling a childhood memory. Next one is representation of knowledge. This domain studies how knowledge is stored and organized in the mind. The brain represents information in a way that helps us understand and use it. For example, different students may remember the same lesson in a different way. Next is imagery. It refers to mental pictures created in our mind. Even when an object is not present, we can imagine it. For example, visualize your own home while sitting in a classroom. Next one is language. Language helps us communicate, learn and share the knowledge. It plays a major role in thinking and understanding information. For example, reading a book, speaking to a friend or writing notes. Next one, developmental psychology. This area study how thinking and cognitive abilities develop throughout the life. It focuses on changes from the childhood to adulthood. For example, how children learn language and problem solving skills. Next is thinking and concept formation. It helps us process information and solve the problems. Concept formation means creating categories and ideas. For example, understanding that apple, bananas and mangoes all belong to the category of fruits. Next is human and artificial intelligence. This domain compares human intelligence with the machine intelligence. Researchers study how humans learn and whether computer can perform the similar tasks. Artificial intelligence, or you can say AI, is an important part of this field. For example, virtual assistant and the AI chatbots. Next topic is a brief history of cognitive psychology. In this, we'll start with the early thought on thinking. People have always wondered, where does knowledge comes from? How is knowledge stored in the mind? Two major views emerge. First one, empiricist. Empiricists believe that knowledge comes from experience. According to them, we learn through seeing, hearing, touching and interacting with the world. Second one is nativist. Nativists believe that some knowledge is inborn. They argue that certain abilities are already present in the human brain at birth. Ancient thinkers also had different opinions. The ancient Egyptians and Aristotle believed that knowledge was located in the heart. However, Plato believed that knowledge was located in the brain. Next is cognition in the Renaissance and beyond. During the Renaissance, scholars generally accepted that knowledge was located in the brain. They believed that people gain knowledge through their senses and intellectual thinking. Several important thinkers contributed to the development of psychology. George Berkeley and David Hume. They suggested that knowledge developed from the sensory experiences and the memories. Wilhelm Wundt is known as the father of experimental psychology. He introduced scientific method to study the mental process. William James played an important role in developing psychology in America. He believed that both the mental structure and the mental process are important for understanding the mind. Next is cognitive psychology in the early 20th century. In the early 20th century, a new approach called behaviorism became popular. Behaviorists focused only on observable behavior. They believed psychology should study stimulus response. Mental processes such as memory, thinking, attention and consciousness were largely ignored. Edward Tolman and cognitive map. Edward Tolman challenge behaviorism. Through his experiments with rats, he showed that animal creates mental map of their surroundings. These mental maps are called cognitive maps. His work suggests that thinking and internal mental process are important. Frederick Bartlett and memory. Frederick Bartlett studied human memory. He argued that people remember meaningful information better than meaningless information. He introduced concept of schema. A schema is a mental framework that helps us organize and understand the information. This idea remains important in a modern cognitive psychology. Next is cognitive psychology as it is today. During the 1950s, psychologists once again became interested in a mental process. This movement became known as the cognitive revolution. Researchers began studying attention, memory, language, thinking, problem solving and consciousness. Cognitive psychology became one of the most important areas of psychology. Now, why did cognitive psychology became popular again? The first is failure of behaviorism. Behaviorism could not explain many important human abilities such as language, memory and thinking. Psychologists realized that internal mental process must be studied. Next is communication theory. Research on information processing helped the scientists understand how the mind receives and processes information. Next is modern linguistics. Studies of language show that human thinking is much more complex than simple stimulus response behavior. Next is memory research. New research improved our understanding of how memory stores and retrieves information. Next is computer science and artificial intelligence. The development of computer inspired psychologists to compare the human mind with information processing system. This led to new theories about memory, language and problem solving. And the last is cognitive development. Gene Pigeon research shows how the children thinking develop from infancy to adolescence. His work greatly influenced cognitive psychology. Next topic is key issues in the study of cognitive psychology. The first issue is nature versus nurture. This debate asks what influences the human thinking more. Is it our inborn ability and genetics called nature, or is it our environment, learning and experiences called nurture? For example, is intelligence inherited from parents, or is it developed through education and life experiences? Today, most psychologists believe that both nature and nurture work together to influence cognition. The second issue is rationalism versus empirism. This debate asks, how do we gain knowledge? Rationalism believes that knowledge comes from reasoning and logical thinking. Empiricists believe that knowledge comes from experience and observation through our senses. For example, a child learns that fire is hot by touching it and experiencing the heat. Modern cognitive psychology recognizes the importance of both reasoning and experience. The third issue is structure versus process. This debate asks, should psychologists study what is stored in the mind, or should they study how the mind works? Structure refers to mental content such as memories, ideas and knowledge. Process refers to mental activities such as thinking, remembering and problem solving. Both approaches help us understand cognitions more completely. The fourth issue is domain generality versus domain specificity. This debate asks, are thinking abilities general or they specific to a certain task? Domain generality, the same cognitive skills can be used across many situations, and domain specificity, different tasks require different mental abilities. For example, solving a mathematics problem may involve different skills than learning a language. Next is validity of causal inferences versus ecological validity. This issue is about research method. Should psychologists conduct research in a highly controlled laboratories or should they study the people in a real life situations? Laboratory research provides a more control and helps identify cause and effect relationships. Real life research reflects natural behavior and everyday experiences. Both approaches are useful for understanding cognition. The sixth issue is applied versus basic research. Basic research focuses on understanding how cognitive processes work. Applied research focuses on solving the practical problems using psychological knowledge. For example, researchers may study how memory works or develop the techniques to improve student learning. Both types of research are important. The final issue is biological versus behavioral method. Biological methods study the brain directly using techniques such as brain scan. Behavioral methods study people action, responses and reaction times. For example, researchers may use MRI scan to observe the brain activity or measure how quickly a person responds to a task. Both methods provide valuable information about cognition. Next topic is key ideas in a cognitive psychology. This section explains some important ideas that guide cognitive psychology. First one, theory and data work together. Cognitive psychology need both theory and the data. A theory helps us understand the data and data helps us test whether a theory is correct. Example, a theory about the memory must be supported by experiments and research findings. Second one is cognition is usually adaptive. The human mind usually helps us adjust to our environment and solve the problems. This is called adaptation. However, our thinking is not always perfect. Example, we sometimes forget the names, make a mistake or have a wrong perceptions. Third is cognitive process work together. Mental processes do not work separately. They interact with each other. For example, perception affect memory, memory affect thinking, attention affect learning. Emotions and motivation can also influence cognitive process. Fourth is cognition must be studied in a different ways. No single method can fully explain the mind. Psychologists use different methods such as experiments, observation, brain imaging, computer models. Using many methods gives a better understanding of cognition. Fifth is basic and applied research are connected. Basic research study how mental processes work. Applied research use this knowledge to solve real life problems. Both types help each other. Example, research on memory can help teachers improving learning methods. Computer, metaphor and human Cognition. Scientists often compare the human mind to a computer. Both can process information, store information, solve problems. Computers are very good at fast calculation, following rules. Humans are very good at understanding emotions, recognizing pattern, making judgment, being creative. Modern AI and neural network try to imitate some human thinking abilities, but they still do not fully work like the human brain. Cognitive science. Cognitive science is a field that combines cognitive psychology, neuroscience and computer science. This field work together to understand thinking, learning, memory, language and problem solving. Modern technology and brain research have greatly improved our understanding of cognition, neuroscience and cognitive psychology. Neuroscience study the brain and the nervous system. Today, cognitive psychology and neuroscience work closely together. Scientists use modern brain imaging techniques such as MRI, PET, EEG. These tools help researchers see brain structure, brain activities during thinking, memory and learning. Because the brain is considered the engine of cognition. Studying the brain helps us understand mental process better. So with this, we have completed Unit 1 Cognitive Psychology. If you found this video helpful, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next lecture.